Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Triangle Investor Interviews. I'm your host, Lucian Valkovic, and before I announce my guest, just a reminder of a disclaimer. This interview and all my interviews are not a recommendation to buy, sell shares, products, or services. Always do your due diligence and consult with your financial advisor. And my today's guest is Colin Healy, CEO for Premier American Uranium. Colin, thank you for joining me today. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's great to see you again. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. Great timing for this interview. A small M&A bomb was dropped yesterday with Premier acquiring nuclear fuels. Of course, that will be the main topic of today's discussion. The acquisition of nuclear fuels is described as a creation of America's largest pure play uranium explorer. Can you elaborate on the strategic rationale behind this? I believe it is a 31 million deal and some transaction highlights from this.
Absolutely. For us, Nuclear Fuels has a very attractive land package in Wyoming. They're in the Powder River Basin. We've got the Cyclone project in Wyoming in the Great Divide Basin. In 2024, the two companies drilled a combined over 200,000 feet of drilling, substantially surpassing others, pure play exploration companies in terms of exploration drilling in the U.S. Or in Wyoming specifically. And I think that building out our footprint in Wyoming, we're more than doubling it with this transaction, with a premium asset with a exploration target of 11.5 to 30 million pounds defined in a 43-101 report, complementing our 7.9 to 12.6 million pound exploration target. I think it's a really, really robust Wyoming package. Our drill window for the Cyclone project that we have is really July to October seasonally. The KC project, which is the flagship of Nuclear Fuels, they have the ability to drill from essentially early spring all the way through to the same time frame, end of October. This really gives us the ability to kind of generate more news across the whole year as well. So it's very complementary from that standpoint as well. And it's a highly prospective property in a jurisdiction that we care a lot about, and that is extremely important in terms of U.S. production. So I think it's the right time for a great asset. The company is well funded, has a big program plan for 2025. So I think that we're going to continue to be the largest pure play uranium exploration company in the U.S. And I think that's a really attractive position to be in.
Yeah, all good points. I want to hear a little bit more about how does your company, how does Nuclear Fuels KC project in Wyoming complement with your existing Cyclone project, and what synergies do you expect to realize in terms of exploration and resource growth?
I think you're going to have to run. We're excited to be running parallel exploration programs on two highly prospective lands. In terms of synergy, for sure, on the permitting and technical side, we've got some really deep knowledge within PUR, specifically within Wyoming with respect to permitting. Obviously, Nuclear Fuels has been very successful at permitting. They've got the ability to go and drill a large amount this year. So I think in terms of synergy, where it really complements the company is something that I touched on just before. Having the ability to deliver through the entire seasonal drilling window from the Wyoming assets is really nice. But as a company builder, both of these assets, the KC asset is located just to the west of Nichols Ranch and just to the southwest of Irigaray. So there's two licensed and operating facilities within a short distance of that potential future deposit. And there's two licensed facilities within 15 miles of our Cyclone project as well in Wyoming. So, as these neo producers transition into production, I think 2, 3, 4 years down the road, they're going to be looking for other deposits to backfill production profiles or expand processing plant capability, which isn't that high in terms of incremental capex. So as far as fueling the American nuclear fuel resurgence, I mean, these projects fit extremely well into that. The biggest area that because they're independent projects for now, the biggest synergy that I see is leveraging the technical and permitting expertise that we have and that they have, and bringing those together and just making an incredible Wyoming platform.
Yeah, definitely. The combined portfolio now spans over 100,000 acres across the key U.S. uranium districts. How do you plan to prioritize exploration and development across these assets, particularly with the addition of nuclear fuel exploration stage projects in Wyoming, Utah, and Arizona?
Yeah, and I'm always going to prioritize the things that I think are going to be most beneficial and demonstrate the most value in each project. So for KC, Nuclear Fuels has made some very, very interesting discoveries to the east, on the eastern portion of their project. They've done a bunch of drilling that, through our technical due diligence, looked really attractive relative to the historic drill work that had been done there. But in terms of prioritization, same thing with Cyclone. Like we were very encouraged by last year's results, and we've started the plan of operations process so that we can be much more aggressive at Cyclone as well. Prioritization is always going to be delineation of resource if we see that we can do that efficiently. So the new discoveries, a few more holes there will tell us if we should be testing other discoveries or aggressively drilling those. And the thrust is always going to be demonstrating value, and the value is in the resources, the pounds on the ground. So that will be where we focus our money for the Wyoming portfolio. New Mexico is a different story for us with the Sebieta project. You've seen probably in the news in the last kind of 2 months that 4 New Mexico projects have been moved onto the Fast 41 permitting list at the federal level. One of our advantages in New Mexico with the Sebieta project, which we're delivering a resource update and PEA for in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we've been saying early summer. I think 4 to 6 weeks definitely falls within that time frame. Excuse me. But it's on private lands of the Sebieta land grant, which means that from a federal permitting perspective, from a land perspective, the Fast 41 program is very much land related. We'll still be dealing with the NRC for federal radioactive materials licenses and stuff when we move into that permitting phase. But the fact that there's a push and a recognition of New Mexico's potential to produce uranium at the federal level is very, very encouraging. We've got 23.5 million pounds there. We're going to have economics wrapped around it, and we have a drill permit that we received earlier this year that we haven't implemented any drilling on yet, because I wanted to deliver that resource update and PEA before we spent money on the project, much more, before we applied a larger budget to it, because I think that this is one of the ways that you show value. If we show the potential economics of the project, we can justify the additional spend, each incremental dollar in the ground, each incremental pound that we discover. People are going to have a template to understand what that means and what the value creation mechanism is there. So prioritization, resource discovery and delineation in Wyoming, and augmenting the PEA once out in New Mexico, and advancing the permitting in New Mexico in parallel.
Got it. Just quick return. The acquisition also included the extensive geological database, and you mentioned historical drilling data, but I would like to hear more about this extensive geological database. What are you getting here?
Well, as you know, there was substantial drilling completed on the KC project prior to acquisition. So as part of our due diligence process, we went through that extensively. Over 3,800 holes drilled historically. Over 184,000 feet were drilled in 2023 and 2024 by Nuclear Fuels. So we've got all of that data, including the data. We've gone through all that data, including the data on the new discoveries, and we're very excited to. We've looked at their drill plans in a way that got us fairly excited about their technical capability, their ability to work with the data, the way that they've handled it and digitized it and made it ready for analysis to spend money efficiently on the project is very encouraging. So That's what we've got. We've got a lot of data in very, very good condition to go and analyze. And they've got an effective team on the ground. And from a permitting perspective, they're running a very large program, and they've been effective at executing drill programs. So the team on the ground there is effective, and they've got the data in a condition that we're able to analyze it and use it to spend efficiently. So I mean, that's all you can really ask for at this stage, I think.
Yeah, you mentioned nuclear fuels team. How will your board look like post-transaction? You have to include two board nominees, right?
Right. They have the ability to nominate two board members, and I expect that Greg Huffman is going to be one of those. They haven't confirmed, so I don't want to speak out of turn on that. They haven't confirmed. I have my own expectation about who's going to be joining the board. Their chairman is Bill Sheriff, extremely well known in the uranium space and successful company builder, financier, and so on. So we'd be excited to have Bill or whoever they nominate, but they haven't officially nominated yet, which is pretty typical in this process. When we did the American Future Fuels transaction, the nominees weren't in front of us until right near the end of the transaction. But I have my expectation.
Yeah, sure. Colin, you mentioned the fast tracking the Grants mineral belt where the Sebaleda project is located. Like you said, got 4 uranium projects added to U.S. federal fast permitting process. My question to you: do you believe that maybe some lower scale, early stage projects will get the position to compete as well?
I definitely do. I think that what's going to drive that is not only the streamlining of permitting that we're seeing. We would love to see more also happen at the state level in terms of permitting efficiency, but the federal government is really kind of demonstrating how serious they are about enabling companies to responsibly go out and produce uranium. And so I think that at the same time, we've got this fundamental supply deficit in uranium that's going to improve uranium price, which is going to direct capital into the smaller groups. And what you get in the non-agreement states where the federal government is taking the lead on permitting before the state permitting generally, or sometimes in parallel. But what you're going to get is states that haven't processed a permit for a uranium mine or uranium processing plant in a decade or more are going to have a template from the federal government for approval. A lot of the approval processes from an environmental and radioactive materials perspective are similar, and I think it's going to be helpful in non-agreement states to have the federal government going through the permitting process, providing assessments of permits applications, and having the state be able to see those and use them as a template. I'm sure that the states will always be extremely diligent in their processing. I'm not suggesting any corners would ever be cut. And from my perspective, I think it'd be damaging if they were. All we want is the most efficient process to get to clean, safe uranium production. And I think that that some of the smaller groups will become much more interesting as some of the mid-tier neo producers start to get in production and succeed, because satellite deposits, in Wyoming, for example, satellite deposits can be a decent, significant distance from an actual central processing plant, because you're transporting not ore in trucks like conventional mining. You're transporting loaded resin, which is a small bead that pulls uranium ions out of liquid. You transport that; it's a much, much higher value payload in a truck than ore, which means you can transport it great distances with very minimal impact on OPEX. And we've got, between Texas and Wyoming, we've got 6 or more licensed operating ISR processing facilities that could receive that. So those of us who can put uranium on resin have a lot of processing options outside of the typical conventional. So I think there's a few different ways that the smaller guys are going to benefit as we transition to higher uranium prices.
Right. Can you give me an update on your Colorado assets, Monogram Mesa, Atkinson Mesa, and Outlaw, and Slick Rock?
Yeah, they continue to be kind of strategic holdings for us. We don't have a big budget applied to them. We're really busy with the resource update in PEA, New Mexico. We're drilling in Wyoming starting in July, very early in July. And, when we complete this transaction, we'll have another program operating in Wyoming with the nuclear fuels team. The Uravan Mineral Belt assets continue to be. We see a bunch of activity there. People are starting to kind of put some money into those projects and put other lands into new shells. So there might be something that we can do strategically with those assets. They all have, especially Monogram Mesa and Atkinson Mesa, have historic production, almost 5 million pounds of uranium, over 20 million pounds of vanadium. With the vanadium, they'll need to go to a conventional processing facility that has a vanadium circuit. So a bit of a different concept there. And I think at some point, at some uranium price, we'll be very justified to go and spend some money there. They're great assets. But there might be other strategic opportunities for those assets as well. And at this time, there's no plan to put a lot of exploration or development capital into those ones.
Yeah, you mentioned drilling. Just one question before we move on. Do you have all licenses secured or all permits secured, and do you have drillers secured as well?
Yeah, drillers is certainly something with the way that activity picked up in Wyoming. Drillers, it was something that was it was a perceived risk. Our driller from 2024, who was extremely effective for us in Wyoming, is ready to go, as are the supporting contractors. So we're good for 2025 for July start. I know that Nuclear Fuels has already has contracted their drillers, and I suspect they'll be underway very shortly in Wyoming. So I think that we are covered to execute those programs for 2025. In New Mexico, we got a permit earlier in the year that post PEA, that's when we'll look at potential resource extension and expansion drilling, and probably drill some holes to get some core for advanced metallurgy work that you would normally do post PEA. And I think that drillers are available in New Mexico. We haven't contracted any because we haven't committed capital for that spend, but I think that you can effectively drill in New Mexico. They're not having the same pressure on them as the Wyoming drill.
Yeah. How big drilling programs are we talking here? How many meters will be drilled on both of these drilling campaigns?
Nuclear Fuels, I believe their published number is 100,000 feet at KC and another 25,000 feet at a secondary project to the west. And so with our program approaching 20,000 feet at Cyclone, that program is not as big as it was going to be this time last year, because last year we had a permit that we were splitting between 2 years at Cyclone, and we drilled very efficiently. And so we drilled extra holes last year. So we have 25 holes left on our permit that we can drill this year. We're going to drill those starting in 3.5 weeks. And at the same time, when we completed the program last year, we started the process of a plan of operations, which is an application that we'll submit in Wyoming hopefully by August. And if we're successful in getting that approved, then there's the possibility to expand that seasonal drilling at our Cyclone project. So the combined, 145,000, 150,000 feet in 2025 is going to generate a ton of news flow for the two companies, with the potential to increase Wyoming, plan of operations approval contingent and weather contingent, and also to go and drill in New Mexico if the market's there. If we're seeing a run in uranium prices and a lot of positive reception to the New Mexico PEA, we'll definitely be out there showing what the potential scale of the project could be.
Yeah, how was the acceptance from your major shareholders, the support from your major shareholders like Sechin Cove, ISO Energy, Anchor Energy, and the Mega Uranium with this transaction?
Well, you know from the DNA there that they're extremely. They founded this. Several of those groups founded this company. When Consolidated Uranium was being acquired by ISO, they spun these assets out to create a company with an acquire, explore, develop mandate with a focus on the U.S. because they saw the opportunity, or they saw the hole that needed to be filled in the market with this type of a vehicle, and they saw the resurgence early happening in the U.S. So there's a lot of support for the transaction from those shareholders because this is specifically their vision for the company is to go out and consolidate high quality projects. They continue to be, as you know, Tim Rotolo, co-founder with Mike Alkin, who you know is our chairman, and Marty Tunney, who's the chief operating officer of ISO, is a board member. Phil Williams, CEO of ISO, is a strategic advisor. Richard Patricio, who runs Mega, is very supportive as well. So it's this is one of the main reasons that I joined this platform and left the analyst seat because of that support, that mentorship, and that vision for the company. So we've seen great support. I think that Encore being a 4% shareholder of us and a large shareholder of nuclear fuels, and potentially having someone on our board is going to be keep them quite interested as well. They've signed voter support agreements on the nuclear fuel side. It's we've got a lot of evidence of support from all the key people, and I think the market received the deal really well. We were happy to be slightly up yesterday and see nuclear fuels come up towards the implied price. I think that's a great market validation of the idea in general.
Yeah, that was my next question. How is the feedback from the retail, from the big boys? How is the general feedback for this transaction?
Extremely positive. I mean, we reach out to all the biggest shareholders immediately upon announcement, and they were all very excited. I think that doing some joint marketing and calls with nuclear fuels have been all quite positive. The fact that Greg will probably continue as part of our board is also quite positive, that they want to stay involved. The support of Encore, the largest shareholder, all of these things were really well received. I mean, I don't think without that, I don't think you move forward with a deal like this. You want everybody to believe to believe in it and to think that it's a much better or a really enhanced platform from a capital markets perspective to execute our strategy from every perspective. I think it's really important to be larger in your niche. In this case, U.S. focused uranium exploration, being the biggest in that. We've already got a large shareholding in URNM. URNM is going to own kind of probably around 9.6% pro forma. So we've got great ETF ownership. I mean, in every way, I think that the project enhances the platform. And our founding pillars: acquire, explore, develop. Every incremental transaction, it gives us the power to go out and do larger deals, or less dilutive transactions. It's just, in every way, it's a stronger platform for what we're trying to do.
Yeah, Colin, final question. How will the news flow look going forward? From where can we expect the news first? Tell me more.
Yeah, okay, so from a Premier side, one of the attractive things about expanding our Wyoming portfolio was not just the attractiveness of the asset, but also the fact that they could start drilling in early spring. We have sage grouse limitations, which is an environmental limitation that people in the Great Divide Basin and some in the Powder River Basin have. But with Casey being able to drill from early spring, we really kind of fill in some lulls in our ability to deliver news to the market. So they'll be drilling imminently and delivering news to the market. We're 4 to 6 weeks away from our resource update in PEA in New Mexico, and we're 3.5 to 4 weeks away from starting drilling in Wyoming. And that all those things will deliver news flow all the way through to year end. We'll probably wind up drilling in Wyoming at both projects seasonally by mid-October, weather depending. But we'll have delivered a lot of news between then and now, including the transaction-related stuff. We're trying to close by mid-August, outside date end of August. So there'll be incremental news related to the transaction, shareholder votes, AGMs, things of that nature. But real meaty catalyst stuff, the PEA and drill results from the 2 Wyoming projects. All from now until the end of the year, really.
Yeah, Colin, thank you very much for this chat. Let's update shareholders when the transaction will be closed. And thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Good to see you.